Hello, my name is Kelly. This is an online lecture about petty cash procedures. In Basic Accounting 2, we need to build on the knowledge that we already have from Basic Accounting 1 about petty cash. We need to look at it in a little bit more detail about how the petty cash system works and how the petty cash book is recorded and written up. First of all, we need to be aware, why would a business hold petty cash? Well, if you remember, this was the idea that businesses actually hold small amounts of physical cash on their premises, normally locked in a small little tin in someone's drawer in the main office. Why would you hold a small amount of cash? Well, it's for those incidental expenses. You need to pop out to buy a pint of milk so you can make a tea or coffee. You've maybe run out of stamps or paper, so you need to pop to the shops to get something. Instead of the staff having to pay out their own personal monies and then claim it back, the business keeps a small amount of petty cash, maybe £50. The member of staff can go, obviously with the correct authority, to that petty cash tin, take the money out, go and buy what they need, bring the change back along with some receipts. Now, what we need to make sure is if we are holding cash on the premises, even if it is only a small amount, that we don't open ourselves up to unnecessary fraud. So what businesses tend to do is first of all decide how much money are they going to put in that petty cash tin to start off with. What's the maximum amount of cash that petty cash tin is ever going to hold? And we call that the impressed amount. Now, how much that impressed amount is will depend on the business, but it doesn't tend to be a large sum just because of the added security risk of holding hundreds or even thousands of pounds in cash on the premises unnecessarily. Remember, this cash is going to be there all the time, if you like. It's not going to be something where we're constantly banking it if we had, for example, lots and lots of cash for sales. So I've got an example here of £50. So what that will mean is when the tin's first set up, £50 of cash will go into it. As people take out money to go and buy the various bits and pieces that they need, such as milk and postage and paying taxi fares, etc., they will replace that cash with a voucher. And the idea is that at any one time, the cash plus the vouchers should always come back to this £50, and that we should be able to do a reconciliation to prove that. If the monies don't add up to the £50, then it indicates that either someone hasn't replaced the cash with a voucher, or potentially someone's taken some money, maybe even for their own use rather than that of the business, which we don't want occurring. So as you take cash out of the tin, you must replace it with a petty cash voucher. So we've got here just below an example of what one of those might look like. You're going to see some of these in the exam. You might have to fill them in, but you might also have to write up the information into the petty cash book. We'll see how this stuff gets tested in some following lecture examples, which are exam standard. So just a reminder on the page there of what it might look like. So as I said, important to remember that once you've set your impressed amount, so in my example, my impressed amount is £50, that tin, whatever's in that tin, must add up to £50. So on the very first day when I put the £50 in, if I don't spend anything, there'll be the £50 left there. As the week goes on, I'll be spending some of that money on those expenses. And as I take, let's say for example, the £5 out to go and buy some stamps, that £5 will be replaced with a voucher for £5, detailing what I have bought. Let's have a look at this illustration that we've got here. You may want to pause the presentation at this point and have a read through of the information. So we can see a business is operating a petty cash impress system. At the end of the month, they draw a cheque from the bank and cash it to restore the petty cash level. That's going to be important to do because eventually that £50 or whatever it is will run out. Okay, so we need to replace that at some point. So let's have a look at what they've done in this business. So a summary of transactions for August. Opening cash in the tin is £100. So that's likely to be this business's impressed amount. Right, going through the month then, they have taken some of that money out and they have replaced it with vouchers. And those vouchers add up to £45.89. So therefore, they've only got £54.11 in cash left at the end of the period. So we can see here that any one time that tin is always adding up to, in this case, 100. They start with 100 at the beginning of the month, and at the end of the month we don't have £100 in cash, we only have £54.11 in cash, but we do have £45.89 in vouchers. So if you were to add those two together, you can see that that comes back to the £100, which is their impressed amount. Now we need to make sure we keep topping up the tin, otherwise we're going to run out of cash and then we won't be able to go and buy the milk we need to make our nice cup of coffee. So we can see here what we would need to do then is write a cheque for the amount of those vouchers. Remember, the vouchers represent the money that has been spent. So if I write a cheque for £45.89 and cash it, I'll take the vouchers out of the tin and write them up in my petty cash book, which we'll see later, and replace those vouchers with £45.89. So I've got £54.11 sitting there in cash, physical cash at the moment in my tin. I've now just added another £45.89 in cash to my tin. So my total now comes back to the 100, which is this business's impressed amount. Now in section 2 of the exam, it's quite a processing area, lots of processing style questions you get asked to do. One of those questions, or tasks if you like, because that's what they're referred to in the real exam, is filling out some of these petty cash vouchers that are going to go into the tin as we take the money out. So we can see in this lecture example, we've got to take a couple of petty cash vouchers that need to be filled in. Now you've got to watch out here because of the VAT that's flying around. Okay, we're going to have some gross amounts, we're going to have some net amounts, and we're going to need to work from gross to net and gross to VAT, etc. In this exam, VAT is currently at 20%, and that's what you'll see in the real exam. So let's have a quick reminder about going from gross to net and net to gross when we're dealing with VAT. If you get stuck, what you can do is you can set up this little cost structure. So when we look at the net amount represents 100%. From that net amount, we then charge VAT at a rate of 20%. So that means that gross figures, so gross meaning net plus VAT, will be standing at 120%. You can then use these percentages to work from one number to another number. So for example, if my stationery here is £36 including VAT, well, that's just another way of saying they've given you a gross amount. So £36 is effectively 120% of a value. Now I need to fill in this voucher, and we can see the voucher here, voucher number PC001 for some pens and pencils, hence the stationery, and I need to fill in the net and the VAT as well as the gross. So I can fill in the gross amount of £36, and then I need to get the VAT amount. Now the easiest way to do this is divide by the line you're on and times by where you want to get to. So if I divide by 120, and just ignore the percentage sign when you're doing it on your calculator. Okay, so divide by 120, and then if I times by 20, that will give you the correct VAT amount. So if you do that on your calculator now, so 36 divided by 120, and then times by 20, you should get £6. The same principle works for the net amount. So I've got the gross amount at the moment, so I'm dividing by the line I'm on, and then I'm going to times by where I want to get to. Now in this case I'm going to work out the net, so we're going to come down and work out the net amount. So I'm going to times 100. So this time take 36, divide by 120, times by 100, and that will get you the net figure of £30. So when I'm going from gross down to VAT or down to the net figure, that's the technique that I tend to use. When you've got the net figure, it's much easier. If we look at the mobile phone top up, it's £15 plus VAT. So you've got the net figure. Now you can use the same principle I've just gone through if you want to, but I always find it's a little bit quicker and easier when you've got a net figure. So if you want to go to gross, you can use this principle here. So you would divide by 100 and times by 120 because you've got the net figure and you're going to gross. I just say, well, if I want to go to gross, I'm just going to times it by 1.2, which is the same thing as dividing by 100 and timesing by 120 mathematically. If you want to get the VAT figure, we'll just times it by 20%. So let's fill in the petty cash voucher for the mobile phone top up. Being careful to fill in the right box. So remember the information in the question there, we were given the net figure, so we can just input that information there. The VAT, well, what we need to do is take the 15 and just times it by 0.2 to get the figure that we need. So that comes out to be 3. And then we need to get the gross amount. Now what you could do is just add these two up because the gross is net plus VAT. So you could just add those up to get your 18. And you can just double check that. It should be 15 times 1.2 will give you 18. And what you tend to find in the exam is one of the petty cash vouchers, they give you the information as a gross figure. And then the other petty cash voucher, they give you the information as a net figure. So the examiner's testing that you can go both ways. Now this next lecture example about courier fees and milk filling in the petty cash vouchers is very, very similar to the one above. So I strongly recommend that you pause the presentation now and that you have an attempt at this one on your own first of all. So if you're ready, pause the presentation now. So what we should have got then is as follows. If we look at the courier fee first of all, it was £12 including VAT. So again here we've got a gross figure, so we can fill that in straight away. We then need to get the VAT and the net. So remember, this represents 120, this represents 20, and this represents 100. So to get the VAT, if we take £12, divide by where it was. So we had the gross figure. Remember, 12 is the gross figure. So divide it by the 120 because that's where we are. That's the number that we've got. And we want to get to the VAT figure. So times it by 20. Then you'll get VAT of £2. To get your net, take the gross figure. Again, divide by 120. And this time times by 100. And you'll get 10. Or alternatively, you could have done the gross minus the VAT, so you could have done 12 minus 2. Then we've got the milk petty cash voucher, and this time we're given the net amount. So it says here milk was for £5.75. So if I want to work out the VAT, I'm just going to take 575 times 0.2, which is 115. And to get the gross, you can either just add these two up, which might be quicker, that's 690, and then you can just double check 575 times 1.2 will also give us £6.90. One more rule just to make you aware of, which you should know already from Basic Accounting 1. If in the exam you do get a number on your calculator that needs rounding to the nearest 2 decimal places, so you get a very, very long number on your calculator with lots and lots and lots of decimal places and you have to round it, when we're dealing with tax, remember that rule. Always round down. Hopefully the examiner is going to give us numbers that work out to be nice amounts that automatically are only at 2 decimal places. But you never know. I would say if you do get a very complex looking number with lots and lots of decimal places, just double check you've done it right on your calculator first. Right? If you're confident that is the number he's given us, then remember that rule of rounding down. Now, one of the other tasks that you're going to have to do in section 2 of the exam is to add up the petty cash tin. Lovely little task to do. You literally just need to go through and imagine that you're counting up a wad of cash, and just be really careful, particularly when you've got things like 10p's, 5p's, 2p's flying around, that you actually add those up correctly. So it's much more of a calculator exercise. Remember that pass mark 70%. It's about trying to be as accurate as possible. So in a lecture example like this, or an exam question, because this is exam standard, just be careful, take your time. I suggest you pause the presentation and add up the amount of cash in that petty cash box for me. So I'd like you to add up this on your calculator, because that's what you're going to be asked to do in the exam. So pause the presentation now and have a go at that. Right, we should find that that lot there, the amount of money in the petty cash box, is 85.25. So all you'll be doing there in the exam is using your calculator to add up a list of numbers. Remember, section 2, nice part of the exam, lots of processing stuff to do. Then we just need to fill in a bit of information from the question. So what we need to do is we need to fill in the balance on the petty cash account. Well, the first sentence here says, partway through the month, the petty cash account had a balance of £87.90. So all we have to do there is just list out the information that the examiner would have given you in the question or the task. Then all you need to do is, as it says there, take the difference. So take the difference between those two. So hopefully a fairly straightforward task. Have a look at the next lecture example, very similar, so I'd suggest that you pause the presentation and have a go at this one completely on your own. So pause the presentation now. So this list of numbers add to 66.35. Balance on the petty cash account, that's on the information up here, 68.65, and therefore the difference between these two numbers, so just do one minus the other, is 230, and that's our lecture example complete. Now what we might want to think about is, why do we get a difference? Well, that difference could be caused by somebody not replacing the cash with a voucher, so taking the cash out and not giving a receipt in for what they've spent the money on. We also could have errors in the petty cash book itself. So we've maybe written up something incorrectly, or we've maybe added something up incorrectly in the book itself. We could have counted the money incorrectly. Or it could be that someone has perhaps stolen some of that money as their petty cash tin. Another petty cash task you're going to see in section 2 of the exam is where you have to restore the impressed amount, which we can see through this lecture example here. So a business has an impressed amount of £100. At the end of the month, the petty cash box has got £10.75 of cash left. So you started with 100 and now you've only got £10.75. Well, what I want to do is I want to make sure if I'm going to restore the petty cash box, that means that that box now has the impressed amount. So if I've only got £10.75, how much more do I need to put into the box to make it add to 100? So I need 89.25 to put into the box so that my box now adds to 100. Let's have a look at the petty cash book in a little bit more detail. Now we would have seen this in Basic Accounting 1. We've got an example of it down here. Now in this exam in section 2 you are going to be required to write up the petty cash book. So again you're going to have to watch out in particular for things like the VAT and making sure you work out the correct amounts if it gives you some inclusive as well as exclusive figures, so i.e. gross and net figures. So you'll have to be careful of that. You will also be expected to work out the balance carried down on the petty cash book. So you look at the debit side, this will tell you the opening amount, and this is the impressed amount that the business uses. So here in this example they're looking at an impressed amount of 100. So in that tin on the first day of the month there's £100. They then go through and incur these expenses. So if you were to take the 100 less the 20, the 17.98 and the 6, that then leaves you with 56.02. So effectively at the end of that month, if you counted the physical cash in that tin, you would have 56.02 left. And you can see there how the debit side, so the money that's gone into the tin, adds up to the money that's gone out of the tin plus the closing cash balance, which is that balance carried down. And you will have to make sure that not only do you put that balance carried down into your answer, but you also total it up as well. Here we have a lecture example to show how that's going to be tested in the exam in section 2. We've got 3 different payments here, some with VAT, some without VAT, and we've also got our balance brought down already listed for us. Okay, this will be given in the actual task itself. In fact, the task will look almost identical to this example that we've got here, the differences being the company names, what they've spent, and obviously the amounts. So first thing to do is just to fill this information into the credit side of your petty cash book. You might want to have a go at doing that now yourself, watching out for that VAT. So if you want to, you can pause the presentation now and have a go at that. So I've listed there the company details. The post office, now the amount there is £15.75 with no VAT, so I'm going to have nothing in the VAT column for that. And then I've got to say to myself, what do I think they have spent money on at the post office? Now I've got a choice here of headings. Well, I think it's likely to be postage. Super Travel Company, now that's £12 plus VAT. So effectively they have given us here some net figures. So super travel, that's likely to be travel expenses. So I need to type in my £12. If it's a net figure, then I need to times that by 0.2 to get the VAT. So 12 times 0.2 is 240. And therefore, effectively 12 times 1.2, or if you like 12 plus 240, gets you 1440. Exactly the same with cool office supplies. That's likely to be office expenses. We then need to plus the VAT. So times that by 0.2 to give us VAT of 190. Add the two together is 1140, or if you prefer 950 times 1.2 will give you the 1140. Now in the exam you will have to manually type in the actual figures, but when it comes to the details you will find that each of these boxes here, sorry, not that one, here, here and here, will be drop down lists attached to them. So you'll be able to move your cursor and then you'll get this pick list which will come up, and then you just click on the thing that you want. Now just watch out, because they will include things like the titles. So we see here postage, travel and office expense, the titles of the petty cash book up here, the titles of that sub-analysis. When you're picking the items that are on the credit side, you need to make sure that you pick the name of the company where you spent the money. So this information up here. So just be careful, because the pick list will contain lots of different options and you need to be careful to ensure that you choose the right one. Don't forget as well, we have to include the balance carried down. Notice here on the pick list they are likely to give you balance brought down. Don't pick that one, because you've already got that done for you. Okay, we finish this table off by adding in here the balance carried down, which you'd select from the list. Now that balance carried down is the 50 less these expenses that you've just written up. So you need to do 50 less 1575 less 1440 less 1140. So if we do that, that will give us 845, and we can just do a check, because once we've done that balance carried down, there's no sub-analysis for it. Okay, you just add in the totals. The total on the debit side is 50, so I've just added up that there. If we add this column here, this should also now come to 50, and then we just need to add these columns here. So 430, 1575, 12 and 950. That brings us to the end of our online lecture about petty cash. It would be a good idea now to have a look at your online guide that you've been given, and you'll find on that guide some details of questions that you should attempt about petty cash from the question bank and the study text as well. You should find that when you look at the actual practice assessments or sample assessments from the question bank, you will see similar questions to what we've just attempted here in these lecture examples. If you have any queries regarding this chapter, this online lecture about petty cash, please feel free to contact your personal tutor. And that concludes this online lecture.